Hey everyone, it's Miss Bell here from the Science Lab, and even though I am here working from home, I'm still making a video for you guys because we are going to be talking about plants. Not only about the basic needs of plants, but also about certain characteristics of plants. Now when you go outside and walk around in nature, and outside your home or outside your school, you should see plants pretty much everywhere. Now, they might not be where roads are built or where buildings or houses lay on top of the grounds, but they might be around a school or they might be next to a road. But plants are crucial for our planet. We get so many good things from plants, and without plants we wouldn't really survive. So why don't we talk about the basic needs of plants? Some people might say plants need 3 or 4 or 5 beneficial needs to help them survive or to help them stay alive. And those things would be air. Just like us, plants need healthy air without a lot of pollution or without any type of harmful gases. The second thing plants need is water, and that would need to be more than likely fresh water depending on where the plant is at. So that could be water falling from the sky, precipitation, like rain. It could be water from our garden hose or from some sort of device that we use to water our plants. A third thing that plants need is the sun. Very important. The sun plays a very big part in helping plants create their own food, because they create their own food. We humans, we have to go out and buy food, or we have to go out and hunt for food. But plants, they don't go to a grocery store to make their food, or they don't eat insects. That's kind of the opposite that happens. But plants make their own food, and they rely on the sun to make that happen. The fourth thing that plants need is healthy soil, full of nutrients, which is just a thing that provides nourishment to either an animal or, in this case, a plant. And last and fifth thing that plants need is space. Now, I don't mean outer space. You know, if we go far away from our planet and we see all the planets and stars, what I mean by space is that they have enough room to be able to grow. Either a plant itself has enough room for the stem and the leaves or the branches and the flower to grow, or a plant has enough room for the roots to really spread out in that soil. So again, those 5 basic needs would be clean air, clean water, the sun, healthy, nutritious soil, and enough space for that plant to thrive in its habitat. So those were the 5 basic needs of plants. And looky here, look what I have. I bought these a little bit before Valentine's Day because I wanted to spruce up our home a little bit with color this winter. And so I went to the store and I bought this cool, colorful bouquet of flowers. And since we're talking about plants this week, I thought it would be fun to include these pretty flowers in my video. And when we talked about basic needs, do you remember what they were? There were 5 of them. Air, water, sun, soil, and space. But I want to talk about plant characteristics, and what I mean by that are pretty much like the parts of a plant. Now this is something you guys talked about last year in 1st grade, and there are 4 main parts to a plant. Right now, looking at my plant, I can see 3 of those 4 major parts. I want you to take a look at my pretty flower right here, and I want you to try to think, what are those 3 parts that I'm talking about? If you're looking all around, could you yourself, 2nd grader at Swift, could you try to name 3 of those parts of a plant? What about these right here? Yeah? They're flat, really thin. They kind of curve a little bit. They're bendy. This one in particular kind of has maybe some sharp edges to on the outside. What would we call this part of a plant? If you said a leaf, you are correct. Leaves are very important to plants. The leaves sometimes have different roles depending on that plant and what the plant needs the leaves to do. For the most part, leaves take all of that sunshine, and that sun enters the leaves, and the energy from the sunlight kind of travels to the plant, and that helps make the food inside the plant. Leaves are very important for gathering or observing the sunlight. So that's one part of a plant. How about these colorful pieces up here towards the top of my plant? What would we call that? Well, let's see. How would we describe this part of a plant? For this particular plant, there are these little petals. They're very soft. Again, they're bendy. They are colorful. With the rest of my bouquet, there were multiple colors. Oranges, blues, purples, yellows, whites. This one itself is kind of like a lime green. And in the center, there's kind of this yellow circular area. And that helps attract insects. Believe it or not, insects are attracted to my plants because of the smell and how it looks, and the insects want to get to that middle part, and that's very important, because insects will gather that pollen and go fly to another plant, and some of that pollen will fall off of the insect, and that's important for pollination or allowing more and more plants to be created and made. Now this part of the plant we would call a flower. I'm pretty sure all of you, if not most of you, have heard the word flower before. And sometimes that might look like a piece of fruit, believe it or not, or a vegetable. But for this type of plant, we would call that a flower. Now there is one more part of a plant that we can talk about by looking at my example right here. And I'm going to point to this right here. And all of these smaller, they're not straight lines. They're kind of wavy. What would we call this part of a plant? Do you happen to know? Let me describe it a little bit. The center line, which is the thicker line, that is really, really stiff and hard. When I try to bend it, it's not budging. It's not bending very well. However, if I try to move one of these thinner lines right here, it has a little bit of a bend, but not as bendy as my leaves and not as bendy as my flower or the petals of my flower. So what would we call this part of the flower? This part of the flower is very important. All parts are important, but because of the flower being grown in the ground, there's another part of a plant called the roots, which we'll talk about in just a moment. They help collect nutrients and water from the soil where that plant is growing. And this part of the plant brings up all of that water. It brings up all of that nutrients up, 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 up to the other parts of the plant. Again, we need water and nutrients to make our plants survive. So we would call this part of the plant a stem. And it is very important. As you can see how stiff, yeah? I'm trying to kind of make my flower bend sideways, and it's not really working. And that's the job of the stem. It is supposed to keep a plant in place and make it grow straight up. It helps bring the flowers outward, if that's how that flower is designed. It gives a place for some leaves to grow, if that's how that plant again is designed. But a stem helps make that water travel and make those nutrients travel throughout the entire plant itself. Now that fourth part of a plant I can't show you with my bouquet of flowers, because when people make bouquets of flowers, they trim or cut the flowers off of the rose bush or off of wherever those plants are growing. So they don't include the roots. But every plant has roots at the very, very bottom. And mostly we don't see roots when we're looking at plants, because roots grow down, down, down in the soil. Sometimes the roots can grow outwards, sometimes they can go down, sometimes they can go down and out. And there are plants on our planet where the roots might come up above the ground and then down, and then up above the ground and down. And that's just depending on the habitat of that particular plant. So the four main parts of a plant, can you remember what they were called? The four main parts are the leaves, the flower, the stem, and the roots. So after talking about the basic needs of plants and the four main parts of a plant, I actually wanted to design and create some plants for you guys. So the first type of plant that I wanted to create, I actually had my kiddo, my daughter Rain, come sit next to me, and we both created our own flowers. Now, flowers have roots, and we know that the roots help soak up any sort of water and nutrients that are found in the soil around the roots. And the roots also help a plant stay in place. We would call that anchoring. Ships, like big ships, they have a heavy metal anchor attached to that ship, and whenever a ship wants to stop and stay in place, they throw that anchor overboard to hit the ground and to allow that ship to stop moving and to stay in one place. And the same thing goes for roots. That is the purpose, or one of the purposes, of a plant's roots, is to anchor that plant to the ground. We also are making leaves for our particular plants, and like I mentioned, we know that leaves help make food for that plant. Leaves gather the sunlight, and with that sun mixed with the carbon dioxide from the air, mixed with the water, all of those ingredients together make plant food. We also are playing around and adding a stem to our plants, and we know that stems help support a plant. A plant can't grow tall and be really strong without that support system from the stem. The leaves are connected to the stem, and with our particular plants, the flower sits at the very top of the stem. Like I mentioned before as well, our flowers are bright and pretty, and even though you can't smell them, let's just pretend they have a really nice fragrance to them. This fragrance, this aroma, along with the looks of the flowers, attract insects, and those insects are going to bounce from flower to flower to flower, and that in itself helps pollinate different flowers along the way, and that helps produce more and more plants. Now, some other things to consider as far as being helpful or not being helpful to plants. We know that plants need those basic needs. They need clean air, they need clean water, they need sunlight, they need healthy soil, and they need enough space to be able to grow properly. But what about certain threats to plants? Certain things that plants don't want or don't like, or will end up not surviving. Certain plants need a certain amount of sun. If certain plants get too much sun, that could be harmful. Just like certain plants getting too much water might be harmful as well. That might lead to that plant getting mold on it, or that plant maybe rotting. So every single plant has a certain amount of sun it needs, a certain amount of water it needs, and even the correct temperature for that plant to survive in its particular habitat. Another threat to plants is being eaten. That might be from a predator or a consumer. That could be us as humans. We eat fruit, we pick flowers, we cut down trees to make paper and other man-made resources. So that is a huge threat to plants. Other human activities can be very bad to plants. Like I mentioned, you can cut down plants or pull plants out of the soil. Even pollution, air pollution or water pollution, can be bad for plants, and pesticides, which can be added to farm lands to help keep the bugs away. These are all different types of threats to plants that we as humans have to be aware of and have to respect, because without plants we can't survive. So we need to make sure to keep our plants in a safe environment. So the next thing I wanted to make was a pumpkin. And I know we talked about the 4 different parts of a plant, being the stem, the roots, the leaves, and the flower. But some plants actually produce some sort of fruit, and a pumpkin is considered a fruit because it has seeds inside of it. So I'm taking my artsy materials and I'm making the different parts of a pumpkin plant. I have big, wide leaves. I have a piece of yarn that represents the stem or the vine. I have these curly pipe cleaners that I twirled around a pencil or a marker. Those are called tendrils. And I have my pumpkin fruit. Now I know that when you look at pictures of pumpkins, you will see that they have these gorgeous yellow flowers, and I know I haven't included them in my activity right here, and that's okay, but I just wanted you to focus on these particular parts of the pumpkin plant. So I have the leaves, I have the stem, I have the fruit, and at the very end of the vine that's closest to the soil, you would normally see the root system. Now I didn't include it here, and that's okay, but let's take a look at the vines. Because the pumpkin plant needs a lot of sun for it to survive, those vines are able to move and climb wherever they need to in order to get the correct amount of sun. And the vine itself, well, that produces an edible fruit, also known as the pumpkin, and there are certain animals, or even us as humans, we take that pumpkin and we eat it and consume it. So pumpkins are a really cool type of plant to investigate when you're talking about maybe the life cycle or the parts of plants, because it consists of fruits and flowers, stems and leaves, and even a really unique root system. Now, even though plants have 4 major parts, different plants have parts that act in different ways. take for instance a cactus. A cactus has these small spiny leaves. Now if we were to touch them, they would poke us and prick us and hurt us, but these small spiny leaves are actually there to help protect that cactus plant from any animals that might try to eat it or from predators. Cactus also have stems that look a lot different than my flower. The stems of a cactus are more thick and waxy, and that's to help cactuses stay alive better in a desert habitat. We know deserts are very, very hot with high temperatures, and deserts don't often rain a lot. So whenever water does come from rain in that environment, cactuses use these thick, waxy stems to help store that rainwater and to help conserve it and let it last a long time. Cactuses also have different looking roots than a lot of other plants. Now, I mentioned that it doesn't rain that often in a desert. So, to help absorb any water that might be available in soil, the roots in a cactus, they grow really wide, like far out. And these wide growing roots help that cactus take any of that water that's in the soil to help it bring in water to help it survive in that hot desert. Now the next thing I want to show you guys is I'm going to make something that we call kelp. Now kelp is like an algae. You might have come across this if you've ever been in a lake or a river. It's kind of green and slimy, maybe a little bit mucusy. And even though kelp resembles a plant, it's actually not a plant. And I know this video we're talking about plants, but I thought it was a good thing to show what kelp looks like and to quickly discuss it, to talk about some of the similarities to kelp and plants. Now, just like other plants, kelp provides food and shelter for the surrounding animals that live in the water around kelp. And just like a forest, kelp grows in really dense patches, like really close to each other. Even though they have enough space to grow and survive, it still is in a similar way like how trees grow in forests. And kelp depends on sunlight, just like plants do. So a lot of kelp is grown in shallow areas of water, because if they go far deep in, let's say, an ocean, they get further and further away from the sun, and they wouldn't be able to survive because they depend on sun. And the kind of these structures, these particular leaf-like flowy structures of kelp look like they move and flow in water, they are able to float toward the top of water because a lot of kelp has these air pockets or these gas pockets inside these leaf-like structures, and that's because they depend on sun, so they need to get closer to the sun. So these air pockets help the leaves not be so heavy, so they won't sink. They'll be able to rise up in the water to get closer to the sun. And even though kelp doesn't have a root system that holds it down and anchors it to the soil, they're able to get the nutrients that they depend on directly from the water around it. Kelp is just a magnificent organism to learn about, and it has a lot of similarities to plants. So that was a lot of information about plants, and we talked about the basic needs of plants as well as the different parts of a plant. Remember, there are 5 basic needs of a plant. That is clean air, clean water, sunlight, healthy soil, and enough space for it to have to grow. And the 4 main parts of a plant would be the leaves, the stem, the roots, and the flower. And all of those parts of a plant might look different from plant to plant. A lily pad that you might find in a pond looks different than a cactus that you would see in the desert. And those 2 plants look different from a huge tree that you see growing in the forest. They all look different because they have to be able to survive in their habitat. The leaves might be big, they might be small. The stem might be very flexible. It might float in water. It might have a really thick, wide trunk. It just all depends on what that plant needs in order to make it from day to day and survive in its habitat. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me here at home, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.